All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my senior portfolio. Yeah. And so I was asked to describe myself in one word, and I chose the word extroverted because I am a social butterfly. If any of you know me very well, my favorite thing in the world is an audience. The greatest thing is like a new audience who don't know me because I just like blow them away. They're not ready. And I'm not like scared of anybody. And some people hate that. Like I am so extroverted, like they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't handle this kid. And that's kind of sometimes a bad thing, but I like it. And some people respect it, so that's why I describe myself like that. How has my family influenced me? Well, the first few years of my life I was homeschooled. And that's usually a bad thing, but in this case it wasn't. I was not allowed to do any video games. To this day I'm not. And TV was extremely limited, so me and my brother got creative. And so we traveled a lot, me and my family. And me and my brother were outdoors all the time. I've been fishing since the day I was born, and I love fishing. And I'm outside all the time. I do things that most kids don't. I'm involved in sports, and yeah. And another thing I like to do is Legos, and I think that set me up for my current path. I love engineering. I love working with my hands, and I still play with Legos today, and I'm a senior. So how am I unique? These are a couple pictures. This is my brother, and this is James Hansen at our first triathlon. That was rough. I do swim for the Calgary swim team, and this year I was captain. I've been swimming for 2 years, my junior and senior year, and I also do lacrosse. Another thing I do is I'm a practicing blacksmith. I don't know how many people you know as a blacksmith, but I just got into that. I think that's pretty unique, and I love doing that. Like I said, I was homeschooled, and I've moved around schools quite a few times, so I know a ton of people, and I always feel like I'm a new kid, but that's not always bad. And yeah. So this is my brother, Daniel. He really got me involved in like most of the sports that I do. And even though he's kind of insane, I look up to him. And yeah. A few things that make me unique. Like I said, I enjoy fishing a lot. These are a few of the fish I've caught. And I think Bryce Butler back there was here when I caught that bad boy. And like I said, I enjoy traveling. My father works all over the place, so we do road trips and family trips. Oh, wow. All the time. This is one of my favorite national parks, Zion National Park in Utah. We've been to Utah a few times. I have to say that's probably one of my favorite states. And yeah, so another thing about like traveling, we've been to almost all of the continental United States, and I love seeing places, and I love driving. Another thing I enjoy doing is catching alligators. This started, I'd say, when, like I said, I was homeschooled, and me and my brother are outside all the time. We started catching lizards, and one of my childhood heroes is Wesley Skinner, that guy's older brother. And he taught me how to catch all sorts of things, and it wasn't long before we were catching like little stuff. We would move on to iguanas, and then I'm like, hey, an alligator's just a big lizard, right? So that's one of my favorite things to do. That night was crazy, so I'm going to tell a story real quick. So there's a path down in Miami called Shark Valley. It's a bike ride that we do. Me and a bunch of boys got on our bikes and went down there at 2 o'clock in the morning and decided to grab a couple alligators. That one right there is an 8-footer that almost killed that kid, but it was worth it. Now we have the story. Oh, this is a good story. I was in Gainesville catching a bunch of just hatched alligators, and I put them in my bathtub because it seemed like a good idea. My mom said, "Get in with them, you won't," and I said, "Bet." So that is me with 3 live alligators in a bathtub. And yeah, alligators are fantastic. I love catching things. These are more of the things that I caught. This is in Utah. Like I said, I love Utah. I used to live out in Oregon. Part of my father's work, we moved out there and we started skiing a whole bunch. Me and my brother got really good at snowboarding. I love snowboarding, love the mountains, all that stuff. This is actually in Georgia. Those are 2 diamondback rattlesnakes that I caught and killed. I later skinned them. That's a fantastic memory for me. And I was with James Hansen here. This is in the Keys. We hand caught sharks at night. That was fantastic. I love that kid. That's actually one of my childhood mentors is James Hansen. I grew up with that kid. Awesome guy. He's up in UF right now, and I miss him. But yeah, so I'm fairly unique. I love the outdoors. I love swimming. I love water. I love snowboarding. And yeah. So some extracurriculars that I do. Sorry. This is lacrosse. I've been doing lacrosse for 2 years at Calvary. I'm a defenseman. I am not starting, but I do play occasionally. This is actually me when I caught my very first alligator, and as you can see, I'm in a Boy Scout uniform. I've been involved in Boy Scouts since as long as I can remember. I started as a Cub Scout with the Skinners and with the Hardys. My father was the Scoutmaster, and I grew up a Boy Scout, just learning how to build fires and do all that outdoor stuff. I'm still a Boy Scout and enjoy it very much. This is me and Caleb Young. This year, I was swim captain. I've been doing swim for 2 years. Last year, I did swim with my brother and James Hansen, and that was a whole lot of fun. It was a really neat experience for me because before, about 2 years ago, I really didn't get involved in extracurriculars, and that was the first high school sport I ever did. And then this year, I was captain, which was pretty cool. This up here is a family photo, and that is the Christmas pageant over at First Baptist. That I have also been doing for 2 years. It's a massive performance, if you haven't seen it, of the whole Christmas story and a bunch of fun things. It's like a play revolving around the Christmas story done at First Baptist. We start practicing for that before school starts, and then we present it for 3 weeks around Christmas time. That is crazy, but it's a lot of fun. And so yeah, the 4 main extracurriculars that I do is lacrosse, Boy Scouts, swimming, and the Christmas pageant. And I would argue that fishing is also an extracurricular because it is a sport. Yeah, boy. Gifts I'd like to use after high school. Like I said, I love engineering, always have. And that really, as a child, stemmed from like playing with my hands, and my father was an engineer, so I always looked up to him. And then after I came to Calvary, I got into the engineering program, led by Mr. Green, who's a awesome dude. I do not think we'd have the engineering program we do without him. And then this year I started doing physics, which I absolutely love physics. Most people hate it. I enjoy it. Engineering and physics is just like my world. I will wake up with a cold sweat and I'm like, how does time dilation work? And I'll work a problem on like 4 different pages and then it's done and I'm just so satisfied. So how I'd like to use this after high school is I would like to graduate a 4-year university in mechanical engineering and then master's in aeronautical engineering and then work for Lockheed Martin and designing aircrafts. I love airplanes and that's what I would like to do. So yeah. So my testimony, this is long. So, I was born, that happened, and I accepted Christ when I was 4 years old at a Christmas, church service led by Pastor Bob down at the BB&T Center, back when we still did that, and there were so many people, and I just remember like I felt that I was called to go down and accept the Lord. So I accepted the Lord when I was about 4, and I was baptized when I was 15. At this, I don't have a picture of myself being baptized, but this spring right here, I was baptized back there. This place up in around Gainesville, High Springs, called Camp Kalakwa. My family has been going up to the Calvary Family Retreat for my entire life, and I got baptized in the spring head of that place, which is like super sacred to me because I've been going there my whole life, and I think it's a really special place. And like just baptized at the beach is cool, but like that place has so many memories for me. I'm very glad that I got baptized there. My sister also got baptized there just this past couple months. Growing in my faith, I've grown a whole lot more. I'd say just in my high school years. I'd say just in the past 2 years than ever before in my life, and a big part of that is being tested in my faith. Over here, I'm in a hospital, and this is when I was still very, very small. This was in 8th grade. I had a brain tumor, which was a significant moment in my life. This is Christina Rebecca Ramsran and Ronald Ramsran. Christina's right there. She remembers that. That was scary. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and when I was told that was like, wow. Like, and I'm in 8th grade, so like, what can you do? And I had the surgery, and fortunately, it was completely removed in one surgery. It was crazy. I was back into school in like 2.5 weeks, and I always looked at that as like a test or a trial. But looking back upon that, I'd rather see it as a blessing, because I think that it brought my family together in a way that nothing else, other than something extremely severe, could have. So yeah. So my testimony continued. My life verse is 1 Kings 19, 11, and 12. And the prophet Samuel is told by God to go up to a mountaintop. And the Lord tells him, my presence will be passing through here. So Samuel climbs up the mountaintop and waits for the Lord. And while he's waiting, there's a huge wind that tears through the mountains. And the prophet looks for God in the wind, and he doesn't see him. And then there's a great fire, a huge fire. And the prophet Samuel says, surely the Lord must be here. So he looks for the Lord in the fire, and he's not there. And then after the fire, there was an earthquake. And the prophet looked for the God in the earthquake, and he was not there. And Samuel didn't know what to do. And after all these things, there was a still small whisper. And I really, really like that verse, because I actually came upon that verse in my brain tumor. I think a lot of times people look for God in these huge events. They're like, wow, like this is happening, or this is happening, I'm going through this, like surely God must show up here, like God, this is your time to show up. And then he doesn't, and people get very disheartened. And I think that it's sometimes not always through those huge times, but after that, you still have to look for him, and he's in a very small whisper. That's why that's my life verse. What has the Lord done to me through high school? This is Colossians 3:14 and 1 Corinthians 3:2. These verses are, love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And the other one is, if you have faith that can move mountains, but you don't have love, you are nothing. In this past year and a half, the Lord's really put something on my heart to just love absolutely everybody. And the more I look, the more I find verses about love in the Bible. It's just so, so important. And, what? Okay, I'm sorry. And so even people that like have wronged me or wronged people that I know, I'll just pass by in the hallway, and the Lord tells me, like, say hi to them, or like give them a hug. Even though in my heart I'm like, I don't like this person at all. So I've really been called to love just these past few years in high school, and I actually tried to learn every single kid in high school's name in Calvary. I'm still working on it. I haven't gotten there yet. But I think that's important. And what has the Lord done to me this year? I've kind of already talked about it. This year, I've kind of made it my mission to learn all the kids' names in my high school. And that seems like pretty trivial, but when I was in middle school, I felt like nobody like knew me, and like nobody said hi to me, nobody gave me a high five, and it was just really kind of like a low place in my life. And I feel like when you're going through something, even just a high five or someone like saying your name in the hallways can really bring you up. And I don't know what people are going through. Like, everyone has a story. But if you just do that to everybody, someone is going to need it. And yeah. I'm going through this very quickly. All right. Disciplines of my faith. So the first one is prayer. 1 Thessalonians 5:16 says, pray without ceasing. I really keep that in mind all the time, and just try to be thankful for everything, even when it seems like everything is not going my way. Church attendance, I attend First Baptist Fort Lauderdale, down there in Fort Lauderdale, like I mentioned earlier. I also do the Christmas pageant with them, and I go along with my family. They have a great small group program there as well, but I also do a small group here at school and at Calvary Fort Lauderdale. My small group here at school is led by Mr. Green. It's with a bunch of my really good friends, and we meet every Wednesday and just have a good time.
The third testimony part is apologetics, and they asked me to focus on a couple things, and I'd like to focus on the origin of the earth. Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," and that's a really difficult topic to discuss because no one can prove anything. But like I said, I love physics, and two big physics things is matter cannot be created or destroyed, and matter will always downward spiral into chaos, not grow into something like working. I'm sorry, just lost the word there. So matter and energy always deteriorate over time, and that's why I do not think the universe could come about in any other way other than created by a God. And yeah. Alright, so how I share my faith. A lot of people like to use evidence to support the Bible, and that's a really good thing to know in the back of your mind, but in my personal experience, I think the best way to reach out to other people is to actually live how you're talking, and to love everybody, because I think when you walk into a room, people are instantly going to judge you, and people always say, pastors always say, hey, you were labeled as a Christian, so walk as a Christian. And that kind of really didn't mean anything to me until about 2 years ago. I was with a friend of mine, and we were in kind of like a party scene, and even though we weren't really partaking in what they were doing, we were still present with them. And we met someone there who later ended up going to church with us. And I felt terrible. I'm like, wow, they saw me in that situation, that presence, and I was no different from anybody else. And now I'm bringing them to church because we were there. Our Christianity, it means nothing if we don't walk the way we should walk. And when people say I'm a Christian and then they go and become a part of the world, they just throw all of that away. It just means nothing. And I think even though that friend of ours started coming to our church, I think they were really there more for me, because that was that really weighed on my heart. I'm like, man, I have to live exactly what I preach, otherwise I'm nothing. And then unconditional love, I think that we should love everyone because God calls us to. He says, love the Lord God and love your neighbor. And your neighbor is everybody. And evidence to support the Bible is always a good thing to have. The facts and the medical and historical records always back up the Bible, but I think you're never going to change someone's mind on the Bible based on simply facts. Because if you're just warring with facts, then you're just having an argument. I think most people come to the Lord in not an understanding that is factful. I'm sorry. It's loading. Wait for it. Man. Deep breath. Logical. I think most people do not come to know the Lord in a logical sense, but rather come to have a relationship with the Lord in that they do not connect with the Lord in a logical way, but more an emotional way. So instead of preaching to people in a logical, this is what it says way, preach in more of a way of love and how you live your life. Sorry that took so long. People have impacted me and mentors. Mr. Green, he's actually here in this room. I love this guy. So he is truly changed. I think my high school would not be anything like it is the way it is without him. I came to Calvary and I got involved in the STEM program, and he just changed the way I thought about engineering. He made me love it, and he's such a good teacher. Like I said earlier, there's no way we have the engineering program we do without him. Mrs. Grash is a new technology teacher, and I've just really seen her as more of a friend than a teacher. She's really been there for me, and I talk to her all the time. Same with my brother. My brother really confided in her and talked to her in when he was low, and just a really person-to-person teacher that I think we could use more of. And Javin Shashadi is my small group leader here at Calvary Fort Lauderdale, and just a really good friend of mine. I met him through HSM here, and he's really just helped me like just through things and encouraged me and been there for me. So I thought that like people have impacted me, they want to be in the school, but I think I can go outside of that. So some other people that have really impacted me is James Hansen, like I mentioned earlier. I grew up with that kid, just riding bikes with him and catching alligators with him. I love him so much. He's an awesome guy. And another guy that really grew up with me and we kind of impacted each other is Gabriel Turner. He's also here. We both grew up homeschooled, and we grew up just in our backyards, just having fun and making things, and I would not be the person I am today without all these people. So I think the person that impacted me most is Mr. Green. I apologize, Mr. Green. That's such a terrible picture of you, but it's the only one I had. I'm sorry. I took that off of my CCA. So, Mr. Green, he is my engineering teacher. He has been for 3 years, but I probably spend like 4 blocks a day in his room. And he's really helped me understand engineering in a whole other way, but like outside of that, he's really helped me understand life in a whole different way. We do small groups with him every year. I've been in his small groups for 2 years now, junior and senior year, with a bunch of other great dudes, and we come together and we just talk about our lives. And you know, some days we just pray for each other for the whole hour, and other days, you know, we go and we play video games. Like, it's a great small group. And you know, I can text him at like almost any hour except when he goes to bed early, and you know, he's just awesome. I can talk about anything with him. He's just an American and a great dude. I talk about guns and stuff all the time with him. He knows everything. Like, if you have a question, Mr. Green has an answer for it, always. It's amazing. This guy's like Google, but better. So, yeah, that's why I love him. And he's for sure going to be at my wedding if I ever get there. And hopefully my funeral, because I don't plan to live long. Alright, a challenge for me at Calvary was like not being new. I got here in 7th grade, and I felt like I re-got here every year up until like 9th grade. Because, like I said earlier, nobody knew me for like the longest time. And unlike the past 2 years at Calvary, where a ton of new kids have come in from other schools, coming through middle school, there were like 3 new kids a year. So you come in and you like have no friends and you know nobody. And so that was a really big struggle for me. I really had no one to go to or hang out with at school, and that's kind of why I've kind of been on this vendetta of love this year, is because I don't want that to happen to other people. And my first 2 years here, we had a headmaster named Chapin Marsh, and most people think terribly about that guy, but there was this one thing he said was, come on in. That was like his statement. And I was like, I think everyone like laughed at him. We're like, wow, that's dumb. And he was saying like, if you see someone that's walking alone or eating alone, you'd say, come on in. And I saw absolutely nobody take that seriously or like follow through on that. But looking back, I think more of a should have. And I try to today. Whenever I see someone eating alone, I'll go and sit with them, or just, like I said, talk to everyone. Advice to my freshman self, never judge anyone. I think hate is the absolute worst thing. And I really wish Calvary as like a whole could grow stronger in love and just become like one strong family. I think that would be such a cool experience if we weren't divided so much. And like everyone has a story, like everyone's been through something. So when someone's acting one way or says something, even if it's a terrible thing or something that they said or did, I don't think you should judge that person based on that. Another thing is do my homework. The first 3 years of my high school, I never did homework, and I got by on tests and quizzes, which worked out, kind of. And if I was there in class, I could just like memorize enough of it to just ace the exams and quizzes, but if I done my homework, I definitely would have gotten better grades. And more extracurriculars. Like I said, these past 2 years have been absolutely crazy between swimming, pageant, and lacrosse. I go from swimming and pageant before school starts. As soon as swimming ends, pageant picks up, and that's almost every day. And then as soon as pageant ends, lacrosse picks up, and that takes out the rest of the year. And that's like a crazy schedule, but I kind of like it because it keeps me busy and I meet new people. And I only started doing this the past 2 years. My first 2 years of high school, I did nothing. Like, I wasted that time. Shouldn't have done that. But I feel like everyone says that on their portfolio, so, yeah. Academic growth, better study habits. Like I said, I never did my homework as an underclassman, and that really hurt me. But learning how I learned was really important to me. Like, sometime last year, I kind of learned how I learn best, which isn't the best way to learn, but it works for me. And I procrastinate pretty badly, but if I can manage that, things usually turn out really well. And so I'm currently dual enrolled in college. That's another extracurricular I should have put up there. I'm dual enrolled at BC right now, and I've learned that I can not go to classes, but if I study my book and my syllabus before the night of the exam, I do really well. So that's a really bad way to learn. I wouldn't suggest that. But if you learn how you learn and then you follow that, it's really good. This past semester, my weighted GPA was above a 4.0, and even though it was the most crazy semester I ever had, I academically did better than I ever have, ever. So yeah. Suggestions to admin. I didn't want to do something like no dress code because those are kind of dumb. I think a shop class and a programming class would be super cool because, like I said, I love to work with my hands, and if I'm not doing something with my hands, I'm just lost. Mr. Green hates me because I will go up to his desk and I'll start talking to him. I will touch everything on his desk, everything. And I don't have ADHD, I just like moving my hands. And yeah, so like I said, I'm a blacksmith. I recently got into welding, and I think that would be super cool if we had more of a hands-on class in Calvary. Another thing I think would be good is programming, because in the STEM endorsement, if you know how to program, you're like gold. Like, people want you. There are 2 people that I know that are amazing programmers, Zach Champion and Mitchell Monahan, and they're Calvary legends. They can do anything. And I think that should be more of common knowledge because of how many people are going through the STEM endorsement. If we had that as a class, learning maybe 2 different languages, I think kids would be much, much more prepared for college. Look at that, right on time. My showcase piece. So like I mentioned, I'm a blacksmith, and I recently finished forging my very first axe. So I actually brought it to school. I don't know if that's a good idea, but here it is. So I just finished forging this actually about a week ago, and I polished it in Mr. Green's room. I don't know if I'm allowed to hand this around, but here we go.
Sure.
Here you go, Mr. H. It's sharp. What? Go for it. So yeah, I love blacksmithing. It's super fun. And my mom said I was born in the wrong century, and I kind of agree with her. But then I remember the feudal system and the plague, and I'm kind of glad I was born in the 21st century. So yeah, I guess if you all want to pass that around, that's my portfolio. Oh, look, I did that. With that, the other day in Mr. Green's room, I was chopping at it because I wanted to kill something, and this board was the only thing around. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for coming, all.
Oh, I think you were supposed to go in the log as your showcase.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Got a little title on this side.
Thanks, Mr. Green. Yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Have a good night.
You're not done yet.
I'm not done yet.
Questions, right?
Oh, my questions, thank you. Almost missed that.
What are your plans after high school?
My plans after high school, I would like to go to UCF. My parents would not like me to, but I would like to attend a 4-year university and study engineering, specifically mechanical engineering, and then master's in aeronautical. Anything else? Mr. H?
Andrew.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
I liked your presentation. I liked your style. I'll be real critical. Some of the words could be a little bit, but that I know Andrew, so I know that's kind of Andrew's personality. So I appreciate Andrew for Andrew too.
Thank you.
I think you covered pretty much everything. Did anybody else have any? We're all typing away here because we got to do this evaluation.
How do I shut this
I
off?
think you covered everything. A little bit more on the apologetics. Can you expand a little bit more on, you talked a little bit about